the way, did you watch the Batman?
Yes.
What'd you think?
I have to see it again because I saw it in the drive-in. But for what I could see, uh, it was an amazing movie. I can follow the plot. It was just like some of the scenes were really blurry because I was in the drive-in.
Mm,
So that's not a good movie to see in the drive-in.
it was just really dark, right?
Yeah, it was really dark. It was hard to see. Some people were like flashing their lights on at certain moments, and it was a
Distracting.
yeah, the drive-in's a cool experience. I just would never see a movie I'm really anticipating. I wouldn't see it at the drive-in.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Coyote Drive-in in Fort Worth. It was pretty cool. I liked the whole atmosphere and everything. It was really dope.
Yeah.
It's just don't see it with a movie that requires you to pay attention a lot of the time. Like you can see it with like a funny movie or something like that, or a rom-com. But
Yeah.
like a movie like Batman, I would definitely not recommend it.
Yeah, I saw it on Saturday, and I don't know how I feel about it. I'm still thinking about it. I feel like I need to consume more like coverage of it, I guess. I don't know. I like it's weird. I like the movie for the first like 2/3. And then I feel like the last third of the movie like totally just lost me, you know? Like I didn't like the way it wrapped up, honestly.
Yeah, you're not the first person who said that.
Yeah, it just
I
loses
was
its it feels like it loses its focus at that point, at that period.
yeah.
Because it like wraps up one story arc and then kind of goes down a different one, and I didn't like it in the like I felt like the themes and like everything it was exploring in the movie kind of like got lost, you know. It was like I don't know. And also I thought it was like I feel like there was like it was trying to say something, but it was like not it wasn't lining up with what was happening on screen for me. They were presenting the events more positively than they were than that what was actually happening, you know? You get what I mean? I'm trying not to say anything spoilery, but
Yeah. Are you talking about like the water? I'm gonna say just say water event. You talking about the water event at the end?
that
Is that like
that and then the very end where there's like the, you know, kind of the reflective, I think he has a monologue or whatever. Um and like it just felt like you know, I don't know. It just felt like it should have been a little bit more like down and dour than it was. You know, it's like weirdly positive, and I don't know, like it just kind of
yeah? He kind of
it didn't
he
feel earned. Like
lost.
that didn't feel earned. Yeah, that didn't feel earned to me. It's not like the Dark Knight, you know, like the Dark
Yeah,
Knight earned the positive ending, you know.
yeah. I don't know. I gotta see it one more time.
Yeah, but
It's one of
maybe
those movies you do have to watch twice, and
yeah.
maybe we could go see it again together, me and
Hey,
you or whatever.
I'm down.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's definitely one of those movies where um you have to pay attention to a lot of shit. Like
yeah,
there's a lot of little shit in the movie that people appreciate. I will say this about the movie. Um, this is the best Batman movie I've ever seen. Now, when I
yeah,
say Batman movie, I'm coming from strictly like from the comics or it took inspiration from the comics. Like this is the best Batman movie. Now, best movie of Batman,
yeah,
I still think that's The Dark Knight. If that makes any sense, if I'm
yeah,
making sense on that
yeah.
aspect.
No, that makes
Um,
sense. I've heard that sentiment, and I don't
yeah,
disagree with it. I think that's. I mean, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's actually a really really good movie.
yeah.
Honestly,
I
like
love the cinematography. I think
yeah,
this movie also really solidified that superhero movies are cinematography pieces of art. Like this
yeah,
movie cinematography was fucking phenomenal. Like
yeah.
I don't want to hear any Martin Scorsese or anybody say like, "Oh, this is fucking trash." It's because it's a superhero movie. Like, nah,
Mm,
this movie was really
yeah,
fucking good. Like,
yeah. Or
uh,
Roger Ebert. I feel like he didn't like superhero
yeah,
movies, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember. Um, but yeah, you know, like there's parts of the movie that are really cool too. I really like the fact that he's inexperienced, and you can kind of tell. Like, there's so many moments. There's like moments in the movie where he like fucks up. You know, like he doesn't he's not graceful. Like it's not like a like you know. There's like a point in the movie where he like does like a dive off of a building, and Batman does that all the time, right? In the comics and
Yeah.
shows and other movies we've seen, and he's like he like almost dies. You know, it's it's like hilarious, dude. You know, I mean, not hilarious in like a how laugh out loud way, but it's like we don't see that from portrayals of Batman. You know. So
Yeah.
I kind of like that they kept it rooted in that, which I think, like, if I think about the ending in a certain way, it actually does work in that context because, like, he kind of lost, but he came out of it with a small victory, you know? So
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it does work when you look at it that way. So I don't know. I think there's one scene in particular though with the villain that um like towards the end I really didn't like it. It didn't work for me. Like it came off really like I don't know. I just didn't like the dialogue personally. Like I didn't feel like him and Batman were interacting in a way that I found satisfying, I guess. It felt really predictable in a bad way, I guess. But that's
Yeah.
like
I didn't like the whole.
yeah.
I'm. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm tired of the whole that trope of we start a revolution, but then we're also really bad people, and we feed into what people, the narrative of what other people say about starting a revolution or some shit like that. If that makes any sense, because I don't want to say the whole movie. I'll probably say it off air, but
Yeah.
I'm just really tired of that trope. Like, oh, we want to start a revolution, bring down the system, kill everybody to do that, and it's such a fucking tired trope.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of it.
Yeah, well,
So
part of me was okay with it in one sense, but then like this is a little spoilery, I guess, but like at the end, how organized everything was so off-putting to me. I was like how dude these people showed up with like fucking like zip lines and shit. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like it kind of was it was a little much that
yeah,
aspect was, but all right, I don't want to like spoil the like risk spoiling the movie anymore if people haven't seen it. So, but it's good. It's a good film. It's a great film actually. I think, but overall, so recommend it for sure. Montrell, hi everybody. This is the Player's Take, episode 160. I'm your host Justin DeSimone, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Montrell Rice. Other than Batman, man, how are you doing this fine day?
I am extremely tired, man. It's a lot of bullshit this week, so I
Yeah.
am pretty much over this week.
Are you working tomorrow?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah. I'm off again tomorrow, this Friday. So
Okay.
I'm thankfully mercifully at the end of my week, but today's Thursdays for me are like can be such long days depending on how things go because I got to work and then we do the show, of course, and I have to edit it and put it up. But like I had like I had like extra shit today that like I had a dentist appointment I had to go to as well in the middle of this, and then we're recording a little later than usual, so I kind of had to like rush home and eat real quick. Like it's just been
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's not your fault. I kind of structured my day that way because I had the dentist appointment, so I ended up not eating until like I drove home from work. I was like fucking starving, dude. So, yeah, it's just a tiring day. So, but got tomorrow off, weekend ahead. Looking forward to getting rested up. So get some video games in hopefully this weekend. Um, all right, so Montreal, something Square Enix did something this week that I want to shout out and kind of let people know. So they launched a Square Enix music channel. It is literally called Square Enix Music, and they posted a bunch of playlists of their game soundtracks broken down by series, and these are all in playlists. And I just want to shout this out so people know about it and can go take a look, but also to give Square some credit because this is really cool. I know they have their music elsewhere. You can buy soundtracks. You mentioned they have it on Spotify and other streaming services as well, but I just think this is cool because YouTube is a place I think a lot of people go to listen to music, myself included. I that is probably the most common place I listen to music. Is on YouTube. So I think it's cool to see this, and it really like to me um opens up a like it kind of to me. I hope Nintendo, a company like Nintendo, will take a note here and maybe do this themselves down the road because they are famously super possessive of their IP for good reason. I mean, it's theirs, but they are also very they go after people on YouTube who post their music up online on YouTube. This is super common, and it's you know disappointing to see because unlike Square, Nintendo does not sell their soundtracks to people, and you cannot listen to them anywhere. Generally outside of their games for the most part, and it's just frustrating. Nintendo is just this company. They do, I mean, they do it all the time with everything. They do with fucking game like emulated games and shit, where they don't want you to have the shit that's theirs, but they don't give anyone a way to buy it from them. So yeah, shout out to Square, Nintendo. Please do the same. I'm begging you. Like you will have one of the most popular YouTube channels out there if you do something like this for your music. Because they have great music in their games. So Montrell, are you a heavy listener of video game soundtracks? I never actually asked you this.
Um, certain times, it depends on my mood. To be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just depends on my mood. Uh, not really Square Enix and stuff. I kind of think their shit's overrated. To be honest with you, like a lot of their shit to me is overrated. Uh,
Man, you trying to
I
start a
do.
fight
I
or
just think
something?
it's I think it's like really bad orchestra porn. Like people think they're like really
Mm-hmm.
fancy when they listen to fucking um yeah, when they listen to fucking Square Enix music. I don't know. It's just really weird. I don't all their music kind of sounds the same to me. If that's really it. Like, you can
Yeah.
tell it's a Square Enix song. Or it's a Square Enix song compared to like I'll say like one song I really like is the Twinnings Dungeon because that's not normally their music. Actually, that whole um saga is that the Shadowbringers saga. Like that whole dungeon music is like really different from their traditional music. 'Cause they're using like guitars and it's not orchestra
Oh,
and
Final Fantasy 14 you're
every
talking about?
yeah
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 14. Like it's really different from their traditional music. So I like it for
Um
that aspect.
Yeah, certain parts of the soundtrack are. I mean, a lot of Final Fantasy 14's music though is like remixes of other tracks from other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah,
Um
I know that. It's just
yeah.
a lot of it doesn't really hit for me. Um,
Yeah, I mean, is
I
it
don't
Final
know.
Fantasy music you're not a fan of or like
Yeah, maybe it's just Final Fantasy music because I really do like Kingdom Hearts music.
yeah,
I
Kingdom
genuinely do
Hearts,
like Kingdom.
Nier. I mean, I think Nier is great. Has a great soundtrack as well.
Nier doesn't touch me as much as it touches other people.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Well,
Bro, I don't know.
it doesn't
Maybe
doesn't
I'm not the
touch you.
biggest
Oh, interesting.
I'm not the biggest Square Enix fan, if you can't tell.
Mhm.
So
Well, I like their music, so get fucked.
yeah. Wow.
It's good. Final Fantasy is a very like specific sound to it that you can pull it out of a fucking thousand tracks. It's very noticeable to hear. They have a lot of iconic music in Final Fantasy, but I actually don't. It's not like Final Fantasy music is not my favorite music of Square's. I'm actually very partial to Kingdom Hearts and Nier specifically, but they have other good soundtracks as well. But I think compared to like Nintendo, I think Nintendo has better music overall in their games
Mhm.
for the most part. They're not like I can see what you mean with Square. Square is kind of like almost like a one note kind of shop with music. They have very similar styles of music for their games. So
Yeah, I just feel like once I heard one Square Enix song, I kind of heard them all, and that's just me personally. I'm not saying their music is bad. I'm not a big fan of it. I
yeah,
can see why people love their tracks and everything like that. Um, I didn't grow up with Square Enix like that. Didn't start really playing Square Enix games until like um maybe Parasite Eve, and I didn't even know that was a Square Enix game. So
Yeah.
or a SquareSoft game if you want to call it. So it's like I don't have that personal connection, nostalgia connection that a lot of people do have with it. So I don't know.
Well,
That's
if you're
just
a
me
fan of Square's
personally.
music, though, they have a channel now on YouTube. You can go check it out. Okay, so let's get to the show proper. For those of you who haven't listened before, this is our weekly show where we talk about video games, video game news, and other topics pertaining to video games. We post at 6 a.m. Central Time on Fridays on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and your favorite podcast app of choice. If you'd like to ask us a question, you can do so on Twitter at The Players Take, or you can send us an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com. All right, Montrell, let's get into it. Let's start with what we've been playing. I think I'll go first this week. I've been playing more Lost Ark. I am still very into this game. And I have gotten to the end of the second to last zone that's currently out. It's called Phaeton or Phaeton. And it is, I finished that. I'm at item level 1,000 or so, a little bit over 1,000. I'm working my way towards tier 3 right now. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get to tier 3 so I can kind of put the game in more of a daily play cadence where I log on, do some dailies, and log out.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, dude, this game's content just keeps going and going, going and going and going. It's fucking wild how much shit this game has. Like, I think this game's going to be really unapproachable in a couple of years when they add all the shit that's in Korea that we don't have yet. I feel like it's going to be overwhelming to the point of like scaring people away. It might already be at that point, to be honest. Like, I've been playing for like 250 hours probably. Let me see. Like, what's my total played time? Okay, 175 hours is not as high as I was thinking, but even so, like, that's a lot of time. That's multiple games, that people could beat. And I'm not even at the point where I'm at the like final tier of end game, which is where the real
Yeah.
game starts.
Hmm.
So it's a big game. I would not play it unless you really are committed. Like, you think you're going to be committed to it as like your main game, for a while. The way
Okay.
people play Destiny or League or something like that, like
Hmm.
or Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft. Like, it kind of needs to be that game for you. Otherwise, I think you're gonna. I think the early game is really poor up until you get to tier 1. I think the game is really boring. The story sucks. The content is boring. It's just kind of a mindless grind that is not very fulfilling. And then when you get to tier 1, the game gets good at that point. So it's but even after you get to tier 1, there's still a huge grind to get to tier 3.
Hmm.
So it's a lot. It's a big game. It's very fun, super enjoyable, but it's definitely a big game. What I will say too, the abyssal dungeons that I played in tier 2 now, tier 1 and tier 2. I did say this I think last week or the week before, but man, the amount of coordination they require is pretty crazy for a game like this. Because it makes matchmaking extremely frustrating and extremely kind of like, matchmaking is difficult in this game because the content is not mindless. Like, you have to coordinate with the party. Like, I did a dungeon last night that took us. We went to the final boss. We probably had to do the final boss 10 or 12 times before we got it down, because
Yeah.
all eight it was an 8-player dungeon, and all 8 players need to be alive throughout majority of the boss fight, because there's a mechanic that requires everyone to coordinate these like orbs that were popping up. You had to like pop them basically, but everyone had to be alive in order for us to be able to pop enough of them. And it was like it wasn't hard, but making 8 people do it in a coordinated, almost like synchronized swimming dance kind of way, was really difficult for 8 people who had never played together. So it took a lot of tries, and it was an interesting experience to say the least. So Game's still really fun though. I'm still having a lot of fun with it. So the other game I've been playing, I did not end up putting any time in Horizon this week, because I got Triangle Strategy on Friday,
Hmm.
and uh, I played, I don't know, 5 to 10 hours maybe at most. It's probably more closer to 5. I am in chapter 4 of the game, and this game's really cool. I'm really excited to play more of it. I think this is going to be a really really fun tactical strategy RPG. It is an interesting game though. It starts really slow. Like I am
Okay.
still in chapter 4. I'm still at the point where the game's main plot hasn't really revealed itself yet. Like it's really still mostly set up,
Okay.
and a lot of dialogue. There are a fucking ton of cutscenes in this game. This is a very story heavy game that is clear almost immediately. In this game, like I'd say of the 5 hours of playtime, I'd say maybe 2.5 to 3 of that is actual battles. That might be being generous too. Like it might be more like 50-50, um cutscenes versus battles. So there's a lot of dialogue in this game. It is very very dialogue heavy. What I will say though is it's very unique in the strategy game realm. They've made something here that I think cannot be directly compared to almost any strategy game I've played, in terms of, so it's like it's got some flashes of like Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, in very small ways. I don't think there's much to compare there though. Like to be completely honest, I think the game is actually much more like Fire Emblem than anything else that I can really think of. It actually borrows a lot of stuff from Fire Emblem, which is really funny. Because that's like the one strategy game that Nintendo makes. And it actually works fairly well here though, because basically the way the game works is you get a party very early in the game, and they give you like 6 or 8 characters, and those characters are all named characters that are part of the story. They all have dialogue, they're all important in their own way. um just like Fire Emblem is, you don't get generic characters. Like you can't hire generics. Like everybody is named, has a portrait, is like part of the story. They have lore to them. They're part of the game world. Like, and the other interesting part of the game so far is that everybody has their own unique class, which is very Fire Emblem esque. I have not gotten characters yet that overlap. I've yet to get 2 characters that have the same class. I think I'm up to 9 characters right now, and they're all unique. They all have their own skills, and abilities and
Okay.
whatnot, and weapons for the most part too. So the game is like interesting in that way. There's also a very Fire Emblem esque class promotion system where you need to get to certain level threshold, and then you need an item in order to promote, like an emblem of some sort, which that is literally ripped right out of Fire Emblem, basically. So the game is interesting in that regard to me. I'm actually very intrigued to play deeper and see kind of more where it goes, because uh, it is different from Fire Emblem in many ways as well. Equipment is pretty much exclusively weapon and accessories. You can upgrade your weapons with materials that you get from battles, and you can buy from shops, and you can find them actually as well. And the weapons are, they have like weapon trees where you can like kind of pick and choose what stats you want to upgrade on each weapon. And each
Hmm.
character's weapon has like a different skill tree. They're not all exactly the same, which is kind of cool as well. So you can kind of customize these characters into little niches based on kind of how you want to use them. They all have their strong suits and kind of what they're inherently good at. Like there's one guy who his weapon's a shield, and he's like he's kind of leans towards being a tank. And that's kind of what I've like focused on with him so far. As I've upgraded his weapon to give him like HP and defense. And I'm giving him accessories
Hmm.
that do the same thing, so he's like hyper tanky. Um,
Okay.
so so there's a lot of customization there. In terms of the story, I am interested for sure. It's a very political game. It's about 3 nations kind of balancing themselves politically against each other. And that's like the main crux of the game so far. I'm assuming at some point war breaks out. That is probably going to happen. Based on the demo, it's absolutely going to happen. What I will say is I'm kind of annoyed that I played the demo now, having played the game, because it spoils like a huge twist in the game. That demo spoils that, and you know, I kind of wish I hadn't played the demo at this point, but it is what it is. So
Okay.
yeah, there's other parts of the game that are cool though. The game also has a whole decision kind of mechanic around it. It's called the game calls it like the scales of conviction. So there will be moments in the story, which I've already gotten past the first one, where you have to make a choice, one of two choices, which would probably reminds people of Tactics Ogre, but it doesn't play out the way Tactics Ogre does. In Tactics Ogre, you just choose A or B, and then something happens as a result of that, and that will send you on two completely different game paths. You'll have two totally different stories and all sorts of shit, right?
Okay.
This game, I don't know how it fully plays out so far, but they have this thing called the Scales of Conviction, and your party actually votes on what you're going to do, and you don't have a vote. You as the player, you have to go, depending on what you want, you have to go talk to people in your party and convince them to vote the way you want them to vote. And then the vote will play out, and then the decision that is made will be based on the 7 votes, whatever the majority is, for that decision. So I did my first one, and it was between two things clearly were different, like would go down different paths. Basically, it was like I could go to one nation or I could go to the other nation. So I'm assuming, depending on which one you go to, the one I picked, I went to the nation I chose. If I had chosen the other one, I would have gone to the other nation and would have had a totally different like story segment for that chapter. Now, what I will say is I don't think this game branches in the way Tactics Ogre does. What I'm assuming is it's kind of almost like a diamond shape. There's probably these diamond shaped break paths where you make decisions and different things happen for a little bit, and then the game kind of like converges back in on itself, and their major events still happen the same way they always happen, every time. That's kind of the
Mm.
impression I'm getting on the choice based stuff,
Okay.
which is, to be honest, it's really the only conceivable way to design it, unless you want the game's scope to get out of control. So it makes sense. But I will be interested to see later in the game how choices really affect things. Like, can you actually significantly change the story based on your decision paths you take? So it's cool. If you like strategy games, like if you're a fan of Fire Emblem, Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy, some of these other ones that have come out over recent years, Front Mission, stuff like that. Like, I think this game will definitely be up your alley. I think it's definitely worth the buy for sure. The game in combat is definitely fun. I'm playing on hard, and my last battle was actually pretty challenging. It was surprisingly so, to the point that I like literally almost lost. I had like 3 characters left, I think, by the end of the battle. So it was
So do your characters respawn at the end of the battle, or are they dead, like
they do.
permadead? Like,
They're not perma dead.
okay.
No, they're not perma dead. The loss condition is to lose everyone in your party, basically. So by me saying it's hard in the sense that your characters die really fucking easily on hard. Like literally get 2 shot. um by like certain characters. Like if you're putting your squishy mages out in the front line where the enemy frontliners can attack them, they will kill them in 2 hits. Like it's pretty they're pretty weak defensively. So at least so far they are. Maybe that changes down the road, but so it is interesting. I've heard it's actually really difficult too on hard. Like there are some battles that are like a bitch to beat. So I'm actually really excited to get deeper into it and kind of experience those more difficult battles. So but yeah, that's all I've been playing this week. So Montrell, what have you been playing?
I've been playing a little bit of. Let's see here. Oh, I've been playing a little bit of Elden Ring. So it's been really interesting to learn Elden Ring over the past couple of days. I've been taking my time with the game. I know I have the game for about 2 weeks now, right? I think about a week now. I only have like 35 hours logged into the game, which is pretty low, considering that everyone who else bought the game, they already have like I think Snakes bought the game way after I did, and he already has like a 60 or 70 hours into the game. And
Yeah.
I don't know where they're getting the time from because we all have the same 24 hours a day.
I mean, I'm
But there
seeing
are
him
people.
log in at all points of the day, man. So I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm trying to play the game and I'm trying to play it at a steady pace as well. Um, and I'm just learning interesting shit about it. Like I don't. This actually makes me want to question Dark Souls altogether. Was the input logging or input reading thing? The game definitely reads your inputs, and it's hard to describe. But there would be certain attacks where you dodge it and you don't press a button. You don't press the attack button, and the enemy character doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if you do that same attack or if you do the same dodge under the same exact scenarios, um, the character will punish you for that. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I feel like if I successfully punish the character or dodge their attack, there shouldn't be another punish for me punishing them. Like, it's just really weird how
Yeah.
the whole thing works.
hmm
So,
Well, yeah. I mean, if the game is actually doing that, um, man, I don't know how I feel about it either. But I lean towards it being poor game design, though. To be honest.
really?
Yeah, I just like, is that fair? Is that fair for the game to read you and then like react based on your inputs? Like that's not a fair playing field. Is it, like, to me? I don't
Yeah, I guess you are right about that. Yeah.
like, I think
And
it would I
I'm
think it would
wondering,
annoy me more than anything.
and it is annoying. So that's one thing I want to find out. I actually want to go back and play the older Souls games to see if there were input reading, and maybe the input reading wasn't as
Frequent.
um frequent or like obvious
Yeah.
as it was in older games. But it's like really telling in this game. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's so large. I just don't know why. It's so obnoxiously apparent in this game. That hasn't really stopped me from playing the game. I love the game so far. I love the different builds you can do. I think you'll love this game because compared to other games, um, yeah, just because of the build variety. Like
hmm
you can make
Yeah.
like I'm doing like a ninja swordsman type deal, or like I call it Virgil from Devil May Cry build, where I got
Mm.
katanas and I can make like swords above me appear and like use my
Dude,
magic and
that's
stuff like that.
awesome. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
hmm
Um, but I will say one thing which I don't like about the game. So far the meta is just magic. Like just use magic, bro. I There's a quest where you have to invade
Oh yeah.
pretty much. And I did the invasion and I wasn't. I usually I can handle two people on their own, right? I usually invade, and then there's like two people questing with each other or whatever, so I can handle that. Um, it's just that it was just everyone had magic, bro. Everybody had magic,
hmm
and even the melee characters had magic. So there is no such thing as a strictly melee build in this game.
Yeah.
I think you're going to need to use some form of magic, whether it's faith, whether it's intelligence, or whether it's arcane. You're going to have to use, or arcane usually is blood magic and like black flame or black magic. You're gonna have to use some type of magic for PvP. That's just the name. That's just the nature of the game. Because
hmm
magic is severely OP. I can see them um nerfing magic just to make it an even playing field. Um, so I don't know. But I'm loving the game so far. As far as PVE, PVE is a little bit left to be desired. I will say for PvP, that weird teleport lag that was there for Dark Souls because From Software has terrible net coding. That's not there.
Yeah.
It's rarely it's way better than what it used to be.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Like if you guys are into PvP, cool, but if you're not, then stay away from it. Stay away from it until you get full build,
I mean, yeah,
until
you
you're
can turn it
comfortable.
off, right? Like you literally don't
Yeah,
need
you can turn it
it's
off.
opt out,
Yeah, you
right?
can. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
or
So
opt in rather.
um it was just I had to do it for a quest.
Hmm.
I probably won't do it again for a while because yeah, like the people's builds I were encountering, even in the low level areas, like the magic is just so fucking crazy, bro. Like I wasn't lying when I say that that's a OP build. Like magic is severely OP, man. It's crazy.
Isn't it always like that though? It's always been like that in Dark Souls, right?
Yeah, but usually you can do a melee build, you can get through some people's stuff.
Yeah.
In this one, it's like even with my teleport dodge, I was still having issues. It was crazy. So
Hmm.
um I will say the world, I think I already mentioned this, like the world's really cool. I like how they designed the world, everything of that nature. I'm not really having any issues with the game. There are a couple bosses that I run into because the input lag shit or the input reading shit rather, that is just like I'm like, man, these bosses seem kind of impossible. There's one magic boss I'm stuck at that forced me to grind. Now I will say this about the grinding aspect of the game. I hope From Software doesn't really patch the farming spots in the game. A lot of the farming spots, like the one that me and Snakes were talking about yesterday. I don't know if you're online when we were talking about it. Actually, you
Hmm.
probably been online, where he can kill like a certain bird and get like 20K in souls or
Oh,
runes or whatever the
yeah, that
case.
sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Um, to get to that spot, you have to do a lot. I had to, get the golden scarab, which means I had to fight like two fucking crimson knights or whatever the fuck they were called, scarlet rotten knights, and then I had to do the PvP quest and everything, which is really hard because there's also like random NPCs that invade you. Um,
Mm.
and this one particular NPC will fuck you up because he has this debuff called madness, and it's really really bad. It's really I don't like it. I think it should be like nerfed. It's really really bad actually. Because it when you turn mad, your eyes glow and you damage yourself, and you also are like CC because you're like holding your face because you're going mad pretty much.
Hmm.
Anyway, so you have to fight that character or whatever. And then another thing you have to do, you got to take it back to the guy, and then well, first you had to beat Godric to start this whole quest off. Like you have to beat Godric. And then you start the quest line. So even to get to the good farm areas in the game, you're probably not going to get to that farm area until like maybe level 30, 40,
Yeah.
and then you can start farming and doing what you're doing. So I'm really hoping they don't patch that out because you have to work for that type of shit. Like that's not an easy reward for a lot of people. That I think that's a reward for the quest they had to go through just to get to that farm spot. And
Hmm.
even to get to the farm spot, you got to go through really, really high level enemies that can potentially one shot you. So um, I think it's worth it. I just think you have to. I don't think they should patch it, and I'm hoping From Software doesn't patch it or whatever. That's my only because I think it gives players a relief. Like, okay, whew, I can just farm for a little bit, then I can go tackle some more dungeons and bosses.
Hmm.
But you kind of need that in this game, and I'm glad this game has those alternative paths to where I don't like a boss, or if I'm just tired of fighting the boss, I can go grind, I can go do other shit, and then I can come back and be like, okay, my head's clear. Now I'm about to fight this boss again. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I
Yeah.
just
I
think,
mean, yeah, I agree. I think it. I think the way the game is, like, it seems silly to almost nerf anything in it. It's like if somebody can get there early enough that it's OP, like, I mean, well, more power to them then, especially if it's as hard as what you're describing or as like effort filled as what you're describing. It's like, I mean, that is a reward in and of itself to doing all that shit, right? Like,
yeah,
isn't that kind of the point?
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that would be disappointing. I think if they nerfed it, even though some people probably look at it as an exploit, but it's
I don't.
it's part of the game though. I mean, like, who cares
Yeah,
if you can grind fast or slow? Like, you isn't there shit like that in other Dark Souls games, anyways?
yeah, there are grind spots, but even in other games, I don't know why developers have such a hard on for nerfing those grind spots.
Mm,
Like, unless it really traumatically breaks the game. But I still feel like that's a player choice. If you want to break the game, like I'm talking about, like if it breaks the game as far as PvP content or something like that, right? Then I guess that makes sense, like on MMOs. But even
hmm.
still, it's like If it's a
Yeah,
single
but it's a
player
single
game,
player
like
game, right?
yeah, like for instance, right? Square Enix nerfed the grind spot in Kingdom Hearts 2 when you go on top of Simba's palace and you can grind that
Yeah,
area.
yeah,
And they nerfed because like the little tiny flying heartless will respawn there all the time. You go back and forth, you go back and forth. They respawn there all the time. They nerfed that area in the final remix version. Like
yeah.
that, you go there, you can kill them all, and then you go back, they're not there anymore. You have to reset the entire world and
Oh,
then
that
go
sucks.
again.
Yeah, that's annoying.
Yeah. So I don't know why games do that. Like I guess because it'll trivialize all of Kingdom Hearts, but like if you're playing on critical
Yeah, but
mode,
dude, like, okay, this is my argument. Like, I don't like it's a single player game. I understand you have like a desired player experience, but if a group of people like find something like that to get around like over level or grind or whatever, like does it really matter that much though at the end of the day? Like they're still playing the game, they're enjoying the game, they're enjoying the game the way they want to enjoy it, and you're almost like an angry kid taking the toy away that you shared with them, you know? It's like
so my
it's I
question
don't
is,
know.
will that constitute as an easy mode? Like, can people can say this is the same argument for like an easy
Mhm.
mode? Like they playing the game, they want to play the way they want to play the game.
Mhm. Yeah, it's fair, I guess. It's a fair thought, but the thing is, it's within the game though. Like, it's a little different because an easy mode is like an actual mode that's like balanced to be easy, whereas
Yeah,
this is like you're playing the game. Because I mean, to get to that place in Simba's Palace, like you got to play through the game on hard still or on critical or whatever the fuck, you know. Like you still need to
yeah.
get there, meaning that you're still having to struggle through the early part of the game. It's which is probably not that easy, meaning that a lot of people probably can't do it. You know, they can't even get to that spot. So, yeah, sure, it might be construed as an easy mode, but or it's like the same logic, but at the same time, there's still like an element of the game that is like I don't know, made that is like designed still to be hard. So that challenge is still there to a certain degree. Plus,
Yeah, and
the thing is about RPGs. This is my thing with RPGs with difficulty. Is even if that place is super fast to grind, anybody with the willpower can grind that much given enough time. Like they just have to put the time in and they can over level, dude. Like it's true in any almost any RPG, right? Like so in Elden Ring, if they take that bird away or whatever the thing is, you can just go
mhm.
somewhere else to grind. It might be less efficient, but you can still do it. You know, you can still go grind for a while and over level. Like that's still part of the game experience. It's not like that's why it wouldn't make sense in this context. Maybe the Kingdom Hearts 2 one is more I'd probably be more on the dev side on that one because that game is a little bit more like they have it's a more curated experience, right? That game is like a linear game where they want the game experience to feel a certain way at every given
Yeah,
point of the game, you know. So
yeah,
that is I think I would consider it more of an exploit. Whereas with Elden Ring, it's like if they take this thing away, there's how many other fucking areas you could go to that you could probably level super fast, really efficiently. Like it's just maybe just not quite as efficient as that thing, you know.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's kind of a weird like because my example in this discussion would be Grim Dawn actually. The developers of Grim Dawn were like fucking zealous at balancing that game. And they would do like I don't even. I think they went a little far personally in that game's instance because this is what they would do, right? This whole game is about build diversity, right? You can make a million different builds because you can multi-class and you can do all sorts of crazy shit in this game. And even within the same multi-class, you could have 4 or 5 different builds because of all the abilities that are on the skill trees and all that shit, and the gear you can use and all that stuff. So there's this whole
mhm,
community that builds up, similar to like PoE and some other games where people make build guides. They tell you what gear to get, what abilities to use. They give you the exact skill point usage, devotions, all that shit, gear, how you should augment it, all that stuff. It's all on the website, right? They make a forum post and that's their guide. So some of these builds are like super OP. They like totally fucking break the game. It's like they trivialize all the content in the game. And Crate would like they did this all the time where they would use these builds basically as like their nerf they're like nerf log basically. They would see these builds and they'd be like, okay, we need to nerf that. It's too good, you know. And it's like, but why? Like this is an ARPG. Isn't this like aren't we supposed to get like super fucking overpowered? And they just did this over and over and over for years, like through the entire game's lifespan. And like in one their defense of it was that they had an intended view of what how the game should feel, and they don't want these build guides to ruin that feeling for new players. Um,
Mm.
and I understand where they're coming from because that is a thing where people go look at builds and they just go find the most OP thing and they follow it to a T, and they're not like really like learning the game. But the thing is,
Experimenting. Yeah.
the thing is, those build guides still exist. They're not taking the build guides away. They're just nerfing the build so it isn't as effective. You know, it's like, are you even accomplishing what you're setting out to do necessarily? You know, it's like, and it's also a single player game. There's no trading economy or anything like that. There's no black market for shit. It's like, does it matter that much if somebody makes a build that's super broken? It got to the point where people were literally hiding their builds. Like they wouldn't post their builds on the forums because they were afraid that if they showed it, like Crate would nerf it. Like that's how bad it got to at a certain point. And the thing is, this game is so complex that when they nerf a build in that game, it would nerf like 15 other builds that use some of the abilities that build use, you know. Like this
Mm.
happened to me before where they would nerf a build into the ground that used some of the abilities I use, and it fucked me up, like it fucked me over, you know. It was like it's like super frustrating. It's like really depressing because I'm like collateral damage basically, and I fucking love the build that I have, and I made it myself. Like I literally made this character myself, and I'm getting nerfed because someone else made a build that like breaks the fucking game. Like that feels really bad, you know. So I don't know. Like the discussion is, I'm all for the dev's vision for sure. I always support that, but there is a limit to it to me where it kind of becomes too much. And maybe this Elden Ring discussion isn't that, or the Kingdom Hearts discussion isn't what I just described, but um at the same time, if it's, I don't know, it's like it's kind of like there's a certain degree of let people play the way they want to play, right? Like the easy
Mhm.
mode thing is maybe a little different because that requires too much effort from Soft to make an easy mode, that feels right, that feels good, that still accomplishes what they want the game to accomplish. Whereas this is within the game they made, There's a little bit of a distinction there, at least for me.
Yeah, I understand. And I mean, I understand it too. It's just I don't know, man. Like I don't feel like I just hope they don't nerf certain shit. Like, and then maybe they're not even nerf magic. Even if magic is like severely OP, I don't think they should nerf it because I think people will figure out, and including myself, melee builds that would
Mm-hmm.
get past it. You know, get
Yeah.
past those things, and I just have to adapt. And if the meta is that, I think the game actually encourages you not to go fully one route or fully the other route.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have to get good and like make a mixture of stuff like that. So that's what I'm gonna do. Uh, but yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said. Especially, I didn't know Crate was doing that on a single player
Yeah.
non market
Yeah.
ARPG. Like I don't know
Yeah.
how to describe it, but yeah, like
It's a
that's
it's a
kind of
single
wild.
player RPG. It has multiplayer, but it's a really small component of the game.
Okay.
I mean, I love that game to death. I love Crate. I think they do a great job, and they're balancing. Like they did make the game feel good. To there is a degree to which it was worth it to me, even though it did hurt me at times. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it's like after 6 years of it, there was a point towards the end. Like they're done patching it for the most part now. They don't really touch anything anymore. They've moved on pretty much, and it got to a point towards the end where I'm like, guys, just like let it go, man. Like, oh, like you got like I'm afraid to play the game because I'm afraid to make a build that's gonna get nerfed. It's like
Yeah.
it's a sucky feeling. It really is a sucky feeling because there were degrees at times where they nerfed things so hard that it became unviable to even play it in ultimate, like the hardest difficulty of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like that is too far. That's like a step too far to me. So, but um, so I know all the stuff we're talking about. I just want to ask, like, the core. Do you like? Are you still feeling as high on the game as you were last week?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I will take it down a notch because of that input reading shit. I really don't like that aspect of the game. Whether it's been there because someone was like, "Ha, man, well, you don't know Souls games," and I'm like, "Bro, like, I played every Souls game except for Demon Souls and Bloodborne." So it's like, or I played Bloodborne. I didn't beat it, but I haven't played Demon Souls. Or I did play Demon Souls, but I haven't beat that one either. Um, so I do know the game and the mechanics of the game. I just thought like that was just a part of like, maybe the AI is reacting. Like there's a difference between AI and input reading, and I want people to understand that.
Yeah.
Like input reading is not AI. That's like mechanical.
It's
Like
just cheating.
it, yeah.
Like,
So I just really want people to understand that because they're like, oh well, when you drink a Estus flask, in Dark Souls 2, the some of the enemies rush at you, and I consider that AI. I don't consider that um input
well,
reading.
because okay, so there's a difference between what you're saying, right? Like drinking an
Hmm.
Estus flask is something that takes a while in a Souls game, meaning that there's an animation and the enemy, like a human could reasonably react to a player drinking an Estus flask, right? Like if you do that in
Hmm.
PvP, there's enough of a window there that somebody could rush you and punish you, meaning that I think an AI could conceivably do the same thing and it feels right, you know. Whereas input lag is like I press the dodge button in a certain direction and the enemy immediately turns in that direction and attacks me. Like that's different. Like that's not like something a human could like that's not something a human could do, generally speaking, unless it's like you're trying to predict movement and stuff like that. Like that's hard to
Hmm.
do. And AI
Yeah.
though is fully capable of doing that all the time, constantly, without missing ever, because you are playing the game. The AI exists within the framework of the game's code, so it can absolutely read your inputs and react to you like to a T, 100%, and make the perfect move to counter you. Like so, this is the thing with AI is that it needs to fool you enough to feel like it's sort of human like, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And maybe that's not the exact goal is making it feel human like, but it's feeling like it's something that is reasonably challenging that isn't like cheap, you know. And that's, maybe input reading is like common. I don't know. It could be. It's possible it is. But
I just don't feel like so. Like I kind of put Monster Hunter in this. I'm not Monster Hunter. I put Dark Souls in the same vein as Monster Hunter, but Monster Hunter, I feel like they have different AI for the monster. Like each monster reacts differently to a situation.
yeah, agreed.
Um, Whereas and I even said the same thing for Dark Souls. Like the older Dark Souls games, they felt like it was an AI. I mean, certain enemies and things are programmed to do certain things, and that's okay. But it never was really obvious button reading, and I don't know. It's That's a whole other debate that I don't think the Souls fans are really ready to have. To be honest, because it will put a stain on on the
Like their
game,
perfect game.
and
Well, it's
yeah,
interesting. You're the first person I've ever heard even mention this. So I kind of want like I I gotta get to Elden Ring. I will play it. I really want to see this for myself. I got to see all this for myself, right? The game itself, and then some of the stuff you're talking about with the input reading. I got to see how it feels because I think you mentioned Margaret, which is like the first major boss. I saw you tweet
yeah.
about it that it was like really bad on that boss, in particular. So,
Hmm.
which could explain why that boss is such a wall for people. Because I've heard that's like that boss is like really hard, for an early game boss for a Souls game. So, I'm interested to see kind of how I feel about it, after playing through it, myself. So, but okay, so there is a discussion around Elden Ring though that I kind of want to talk about real quick. Is There were some devs that tweeted this past week about the game, and they work at other major studios. And they were on Twitter, kind of almost talking shit about Elden Ring. So
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait till you get to this. Yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
so
I'm
I'm gonna
sorry.
read. I'm gonna read this. So there was a UX director at from Ubisoft. His name is Ahmed Salama, and he this is what he said. Quote: The fact that Elden Ring scored a 97 on Metacritic is proof that reviewers don't give a flaming poop about game UI. My life is a lie. End quote. Then a Guerrilla Games quest designer, Blake Rabucci, I don't know, said criticized the game as well afterwards, saying um, that people don't value good quest design. This was after someone named Rebecca Fernandez O'Shea said uh, they don't care about PC graphics, stability, and performance. Apparently, so this little thread of comments kind of went viral over this past week, and it kind of sparked this whole discussion about UI and UX in games. There was a lot of tweets about like people kind of made like a mock-up of what the game would look like if Ubisoft made it, and it was like a really cluttered UI, had all sorts of fucking shit on it, which,
Hmm.
like map markers on the fucking mini map and shit. Like it looks, looks like an Ubisoft game. Or made it look like an Ubisoft game. So I wanted to talk about this, and I think you do as well, because it brings up an interesting discussion, because Elden Ring and Zelda, actually Breath of the Wild, are very minimalist in their UI. And
Hmm.
they're games that are deliberately like that in order to, I think, their intent there is to immerse you more into the game, right? UI takes away from immersion. If your UI is extremely like in your face, it kind of takes away from what you're seeing in the rest of the game when you're playing it.
Yep.
And
100% agree.
the opposite would be like Horizon, or more aptly like Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed, right? Which have a ton of fucking UI elements, all sorts of markers and shit. You have a compass at the top of your map. You have this fucking path telling you where to go for quests and shit. Your mini map, you got a fucking mini map that has all these fucking markers on it and shit. Enemies have little things over their head and, all sorts of fucking crazy shit, right? So the game's like giving you all this fucking information through icons and stuff like that. That's like the other end of the spectrum, right? So there's been a huge debate about like which one is more desirable for a game, and I don't know. So why don't you get us started, Montrell? Like, where do you come down on this kind of debate? Like, what do you feel?
Well, I got to go back and play Breath of the Wild. I really do, because I can't really remember that game's UI, but I do remember it being very minimalist in this thing. Did it give you quest markers?
So it does. It would tell you where to go on the map. And I'm gonna get into this in a bit, but yes, if you had a quest, you could track it, and it would tell you where to go relatively for the most part. A lot of quests would tell you that, especially the main quests, like the ones that are considered story. They would tell
Hmm.
you where to go on the map.
Okay.
But that's it. It would be on the map. I don't even think it would. I think it might give you a distance marker. I'm not even sure it did that though. So it was pretty minimal for the most part.
Okay. So in this game, Elden Ring, you can definitely put down quests or your own markers, and the markers will actually show up in the game world. So if I put down a little marker, a little blue marker, it would show up in the game world as a blue beam shooting straight up. That's like even covered by fog and everything like that, the rain and the elements. But you can still see it. So it's not like a beam that's showing you the light where it's at, but you can still see it from a distance, but you have to really focus on it. If you place it across the world, you're not probably going to see that beam, if that makes any sense. Um, so that being said, uh, I just really want to know where the hate came from for this game. Like, it's so weird that everyone's like, "Oh, you hate quest marker, or you hate this and you hate that," and it's like, I think it depends on the game. That's my final answer. It depends on the game. Like sometime a good UI is necessary,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Yeah.
I need a lot of information, what's going on. Like League of Legends or Dota, I need a mini map. I need, my QWER. I need to
Mm-hmm.
know what my cooldowns are. I need to know, how many stats I have. I need that. A minimalist thing would not work for Dota or
Or like a racing game, you need to know how
yeah,
fast
or
you're driving, like, with shit like
but
that. You need
even
to
some
you need to know the track too. So like you need a map for that as well in those
but
games.
even some race car drivers or race car games, have it where you just follow the road. Like they want it to be as
Mm.
realistic as possible, you
Well,
know?
I will say there's the first person mode, right, that builds the UI into your actual car dashboard, and that's kind of
Yep.
that's a way to play. Like that's the immersive way to play, right?
Exactly, yeah. And or they may not even tell you the track. I think it's I want to say it's Dirt or Sega Rally where they have like a fake uh NPC or like teammate in your ear telling you when to turn and when not to turn, like a real racing game.
Mm, mhm.
So instead of giving you a map. So I mean, I think that's intuitive, right? Um, but games like even games like oh, they would hate old Monster Hunter. You remember old Monster Hunter? You couldn't even see the monster on the map.
Yeah,
You had to paintball the monster.
yeah, and it would only
And I
last for like 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought that was really immersive to where what we were trying to do. We were hunting the monster, so you were technically tracking the monster. You had to know where the monster was at and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So would that be considered bad game design? Because they made a a UI function a actual player function.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think people would say yes. I mean, think about Monster Hunter didn't get popular until World came out, and that's when a lot of those elements went away. That game
mm,
that game became a little bit more Ubisoft-ish. There's a lot of shit going on the screen of that game. You
yeah.
get the fucking little bugs telling you all this, like highlighting shit for you and telling you where to go, and you see the monster tracks on the ground and all that stuff. So like I think modern game design has definitely gone down this path, and so I'm I'm a little bit more in the middle on this, to be honest. I don't really have a side here, but
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I think I lean more towards the Elden Ring Breath of the Wild side than I do the Ubisoft side, like the heavy, quest markers and shit and map markers and all that stuff. Because I think the thing is, I think this discussion is it's annoying as it always is, where there's like no nuance to it. It's one or the other. You're seeing sides being formed where it's like, oh, UI bad, and then like no UI is good. It's like, or vice
Well,
versa, and it's like,
it's Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and I think Western developers and Western media has a weird hard on to destroy this game, and I have no idea why.
yeah.
But
Well,
continue, yeah.
I don't think it's media. I think like devs seem really. I mean, this originated from devs, and I think this like there's been other devs coming out since then, like since this, kind of talking about this game too in a like a negative light. I think developers are really like almost threatened by this
Threaten,
game.
yeah.
It's weird. It's like they don't want. They're like almost afraid of what they're doing being perceived negatively because of this game's positive reception. Because Horizon's like a good example because it got completely overshadowed by Elden Ring. Like nobody's talked about Horizon since Elden Ring came out. I barely see anything about that game anymore on my Twitter timeline, and
Mhm.
it's unfortunate that happened, but at the same time, that like that game like it feels really unfortunate because that I started it and the game literally asks you when you start a new game, do you want to play in exploration mode or do you want to play in guided mode? Like literally it's asking you what kind of marker experience do you want? Do you want a game with a ton of map markers and a lot of shit on the screen kind of telling you what to do, or do you not want that? And you can actually tune it. I'm pretty sure you can tune it in the options to be somewhere in the middle too. If you want some markers but not all, you can kind of tune it a little bit. So the game gives you options. I think it's a little unfair to characterize Horizon in that way because you can choose the game experience you want. And I
Mhm.
think Ubisoft games are actually similar in this regard. You can turn shit off in those games too. The only problem with that argument is that these games are designed around map markers. Like their intent is that you have them, a lot of the time. So that's kind of the one caveat to that choice, that it doesn't necessarily feel good to turn the UI off in an Ubisoft game. Even though you can, it probably doesn't feel great. So there's that. Then on the other side of the spectrum, there's the no UI, right? Or minimalist UI that like Elden Ring has. To me, I don't look at it as inherently good or bad. It has its pros and cons. The pro for me, and this is a big one because this is a big reason why I play games, is the immersion factor, right? a game with a minimalist UI is easier to immerse yourself in. But there's also the element of discovery, and I think this is why people are grabbed onto Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild so much, is that they feel like they feel like their agency is driving the game. Like they're deciding where to go, they're deciding what to discover, and they're discovering things themselves, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
chose to go that way. The game didn't tell them to go there. They chose to do that themselves. I think that's a big reason why these games have taken off the way they have, is that. Whereas games with map markers direct you where to go, right? They're telling you where to go. And that is inherently like almost like it's hand holding in a sense that in I think gamers are starting to come around to the idea that it's like come full circle, because we started with nothing, right? And then we kind of, like we talked about this I think last week or the week before. We got to a point where games started becoming heavily handholdy, where they tell you where to go, they give you map markers, quest markers, all this stuff. You don't even need to read quest text anymore. You don't have to pay attention to it. And now we're coming back to the beginning, where people don't want that stuff anymore, because they want to play the game. Like they want to experience the game, like, and actually live in that world and experience the world and discover the world themselves. So that's like the two sides of the coin. I think there's a place for games with heavy map markers and heavy amounts of guidance in the game, but
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know if it's going to be the thing. I think it's going to be a thing that's actually going to be heavily scrutinized going forward, though. I think Elden Ring has now broken through that dam in the way that Breath of the Wild started the flow of water. I think
Mm-hmm.
Elden Ring has just blasted it wide open. And yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about Elden Ring. On the map, there are certain things. If you know how to read the map, once you start looking at the map a lot, you realize certain things. Like there's a thing where, like, there's a map underneath the map, right? So it's like a map that barely has anything on it. Maybe has like little paths on it. In that little path, you see like a little tower. And that little tower means that's where you can discover another piece of the map, the full map.
Hmm.
Um, And then once you get a piece of that full map, you'll discover like maybe like a little orange thing that resembles like a cave or whatever.
Hmm.
And that means there's a cave nearby or something like that. Or you'll see like a blue marker there. That means that you marker, but you'll see a blue indentation on the map. That's like perma map on the map. That means like, oh, there's like maybe a side boss battle there or something like that. So I
Hmm.
mean, there's ways to see what's on the map without the map saying, "Hey, there's a question mark here, Witcher style." Like, oh, you
Yeah,
might want to
well,
investigate this area.
no, it's
Like,
a great point too, and I think that's something that game designers need to start wrapping their head around, is that you can have markers on the map. Like think about Breath of the Wild. I'm pretty sure if you go look at the map in that game, you can see where shrines are on the map. Like
mm-hmm,
like they're there. They're just there. Like they're not, a lot of them aren't hidden. You could see them there. And you could put a fucking marker down and you can go find it yourself. But
yeah,
you the player are observing that detail. And this is the same in
exactly,
Elden Ring, right? Whereas the game like Witcher is a good example, right? I think Witcher's a great game, but it is also kind of the epitome. I think it's the game that really set us down this path of markers, though, because that game was all about question marks, right? And like I played a lot of The Witcher with the UI turned off because I wanted to be immersed in The Witcher. And it was really fun to play the game that way. At a certain point it became too time consuming for me, and also I was trying to go for the platinum, so it was like not like I needed the markers to do that, to
yeah,
achieve that goal, which just goes back to the point of the design of the game, though, is that the game was designed around the map markers. And it's one of those things, is like I think Elden Ring's dense, right? There's a lot of shit in it that you can find. Witcher is also dense, but the thing with Witcher that's different from Elden Ring, or at least my impression of what you've said about Elden Ring, is that The Witcher puts question marks on the map, and between those question marks, there isn't really a whole lot there a lot of the time. Like there's not much there unless there's something, like the game literally puts a pin on the map saying there's something here, you know? And
mm-hmm,
you can run around between those areas and you're not going to find much. You'll find just some bears walking around, or like wolves walking around, or maybe some NPCs just on a pathing, like doing pathing, but you can't interact with them or anything like that. So it's like that world is not as dense, right? It's like there's a lot of empty patches between them. Maybe Elden Ring has that too, but the fact that there aren't markers, you don't know that, you know? It's almost
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's the way I describe Wind Waker, right? This is my issue with Wind Waker comes to the core tenet of this whole marker thing, right? Like Wind Waker doesn't have map markers, but it does. The islands are map markers. Like that's your map marker in Wind Waker, and that's why I don't like the game because it's like obvious. Like okay, you go to an island, there's something here. Like I don't know how much, but there's something here. It's like, and that's like what it ruins that sense of discovery that I had in like Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, right? At least for me. And that's a game that doesn't even have map markers, like in a literal sense, but it has the same kind of effect, right? The way the game's map was designed.
Hmm.
So those question marks in The Witcher to me are equivalent to the islands in Wind Waker, you know, for the most part. And that's the way I look at it. It's like I am starting to find less appeal in games that give me that. And I think a lot of people are having that same thought process right now. So,
Yeah. So that's the thing too. Like immersion is kind of like a big deal. I was watching somebody. I only watched like 5 minutes of this video, but I was watching someone talk about Morrowind, and when he was describing Morrowind, and he was like, um, he's like maybe 23 or 24 or something like that. So he wasn't, he didn't grow up when us playing Morrowind.
mm-hmm,
So he said he was playing Morrowind, and he's like, man, these graphics are shitty, blah blah blah. And he noticed something when he was going to do his quest that the walk speed was very slow. And like if you use your stamina, if you run, that uses your stamina, but then you have to use your also hold your stamina because maybe you get ambushed on the road or something like that from
mm-hmm,
bandits or some shit like that.
mm-hmm,
So he was just like noticing little things, and then he said that he got to a certain area where he was noticing landmarkers because the game described where to go. It was like go in the quest log. It said, "Hey, I need you to go across this bridge. When you go across this bridge, you're gonna see a tree to your right. To your right, you're gonna go down there, and once you go down to there, you're gonna come to a divot in the ridge of this creek. When you come to the divot in the ridge, make a left." He was just like, I followed the instructions. I got lost a couple times, but I noticed myself like being immersed into the music, being immersed
mm-hmm,
into the land,
mm-hmm,
noticing different landmarkers. So when I do run across the way, I know where I'm going. I know the land by heart, like I'm actually walking down the street in my own neighborhood.
mm-hmm, yeah.
Because I mean, to be honest, like there is a real life quest marker, and that's called Google Maps. Like a lot of people forget where they go
That's true.
because
Yeah.
they rely on Google Maps a lot of
Yeah.
times. And
Yeah.
I've actually gotten off. I weaned myself off Google Maps so I can learn how to get around Texas without using it. Now, in certain places, I still need to know where I'm going, but um, there is subtlety in like emerging and not in just discovering shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
of course you got to go to work or whatever. You need Google Maps or whatever. You're trying to get to an interview. You don't got time for that shit. But like, yeah, if you're just driving around, you have nothing to do. Like I feel like there's immersion in that. There's a sense of like knowing where you need to belong and or knowing where you need to go, just in case your phone dies or something of that nature. You're like, oh, okay, I remember this target right here on the street. And I feel like that's the same thing with video games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not only is it immersion, but like there are landmarks and stuff like that. I think one of the greatest examples, or not greatest examples, like old Monster Hunter Run. Uh, they really it really tried to show what they wanted to do with that game. But they just didn't have the technology. There was a quest mark. It was an early quest. I'll never forget the quest. It was collect 10 blue mushrooms on Monster Hunter One,
Mm-hmm.
and the Forest and Hills area. And the Forest and Hills area, and like you said, they didn't have on the old Monster Hunters. They didn't tell you where to collect stuff at. You just had to go look for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in the book, in the actual quest log, the guy would be like, "Hey, if you want a hint, follow the moss swines and see where they sniff at. And once they sniff there, there's maybe mushrooms there." So I would look for these little moss swine animals that look like, really docile bullfangos. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll look for them and I'll see them sniffing there. And I'll like go and the animation would cue because they didn't even give you an animation marker above your head to like press X here. You just had to know what it was, right? So
Yeah.
uh, you pressed it and your hunter be like, oh, okay, I see mushrooms down here, and then your hunter pick it up and like either blue mushrooms, unique mushrooms, or whatever the fuck, you know. And I thought that was like at the time because this was like 2004, y'all. I was like, holy shit, this game's fucking amazing.
Mhm.
What the fuck? You know, PS2 graphics, y'all.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so cool. And then like when I had to track the monster, I had to throw the fucking paintball on the monster and shit like that. And then it'll appear on my map. I'm like, holy shit! Like I'm actually tracking a monster. I actually have to trap the monster. I'm a fucking hunter. And I feel like in Monster Hunter World, they wanted to do that with the tracking. I felt like they wanted to do that. They wanted to be a little bit more minimalist, but I feel like Capcom was like, "Hey guys, come on, like we got to get this to appeal to everybody. Can you
Or they didn't
do?"
have time. It might be a thing they didn't have time to fully develop the mechanics, and they just kind of had to go with like a point 0.5 version of it, where it's like
Yeah,
kind of just it's not like fulfilling. Like it's just a different version of map markers kind of thing.
yeah,
Because that was a big criticism we had of that game is like I like the idea of tracking the monster rather than just running around randomly, but it didn't feel fulfilling in Monster Hunter World because the game just like highlights these little things on the ground and you pick them up and then eventually the monster is revealed on the map. It's not like you're not actually tracking the monster. It doesn't feel like you're tracking the monster. You're just running around like picking shit up the game tells you to pick up, you know.
yeah.
And I think that's
So
like that's a key element of the difference between the two is like when the game guides you to such a degree that you feel like your agency is almost taken away as a player. That's not fun, you know.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, it would have been cool like in Assassin's Creed that you had to track the person, you know, track the. I think in the older Assassin's Creed, like when you had to track a target, you had to go through a crowd, see
Yes,
what he looks like,
I don't
and
even
then
think they were marked. Were they even marked back then? Like,
I don't think so. No,
yeah,
I think you had to actually look for the person, and then it marked it for you after you found it. Your
yeah,
character Altier would be like, "Oh, I found the character" or whatever, and then you'll track it. The camera will like follow it. But like, I thought that was something cool. Like even the old Tomb Raiders, they didn't have map markers. Like you had
hmm
to figure that shit out. Like those levels were fucking huge at the time. Um, you just
yeah,
had to figure out where to go. You had to backtrack and everything of that nature. So like I said, I'm on both sides of the scope. Some games need a better UI. Now, one thing I don't like it doesn't Elden Ring doesn't really have a pause menu
mm,
or a pause button. The pause that you have to go and like do a tutorial, like or not do a tutorial, but it'll, like tell you like menu tutorial, then it'll pause the game. So I don't like that aspect. I think they should have a pause button, but people were like, "Oh, well, Monster Hunter has a pause button." Bro, do you know how long it took for us to get a pause button in Monster Hunter? I think we can get a pause button until the PSP version of the fucking games.
yeah, and then
So it's like,
lock on was another one. Like people wanted lock
yeah,
on in the game, and then we eventually got lock on, and it's like the most useless thing imaginable in Monster Hunter. You know,
yep. I don't
like
even use it.
I've never known anyone to use lock on who plays Monster Hunter. Like you just don't play the game that way. Like it's just not the way that you play the
Yeah,
game. You know, so yeah, I don't know. I just like I it's really unfortunate to see devs like kind of almost like bitter that this game's so successful. It's like guys, like just I don't know, like maybe take something from it, you know, that there's a reason it's successful. This isn't a situation where Elden Ring's a bad game. Like to me, UI can't make a great game bad. Like that, like almost that's like almost impossible for that to happen. You know, like I've heard nitpicks of like God of War's UI before, and like to me, yeah, maybe there's some like poor UI elements to God of War, but the game's still fucking amazing. You know, like like it's kind of thing like you don't care that much when you're playing an amazing game. You know.
yeah, and I admit Elden Ring can do some UI stuff a little bit better, but I do like the minimalist approach. They really wanted you to be immersed in the world. Like I'm barely only time I'm pressing the pause menu is if I'm changing a weapon or something like that or item
Mhm.
equipment because I'm so immersed in the world. And I have to be because an enemy may run up on me like during a patrol route or something like that. So
Yeah.
unless you're like in a safe area or near a grace, so it's like I like that. I like that there's always almost a pending sense of danger, and there are areas of solitude. Like you don't know how it feels to go through a whole area or a whole mini dungeon or whatever, and you finally see a grace at the end of the tunnel. You're like, holy shit, thank God, I'm safe. Oh my God, like there's solitude in that
Yeah.
shit. But if you just told me where the fucking grace was, it's like that solitude wouldn't be there for me. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird argument. Well, it's not a weird argument. It's just weird that they're making it against Elden Ring and they're defending like
Breath of the Wild.
uh, yeah, Breath of the Wild and like
Even though they're
Ubisoft games.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, right.
I think I think I think players have long been like, "Hey, we are actually tired of the UB. Like, we're not fucking stupid."
Yeah.
Like, at least the players I've been around, and there may be other players like,
Well,
"Yo,
even Ubisoft acknowledged it, dude. They like completely changed the way they made Assassin's Creed several years ago for a reason because they were making them every year, releasing a new one every year, and people got sick and fucking tired of it. To the
yep,
point that they had to reinvent the franchise, basically. So
yeah, I don't know." It's one of those weird things where,
yeah, and I mean, I think the one element of this that annoys me is like devs coming in and being like, trying to say what good quest design is, what good UI design is, like it's an objective fact. Like, yeah, you have expertise for sure, like more than like me or you have for sure, but
for sure,
at the
yeah,
same time, like you are making the game to appeal to us. So if we tell you that we don't like a certain thing and you're getting that feedback 90% of the time, you may want to listen a little bit. There is a certain element of, you don't know what you want like as a consumer, but there's also an
yeah.
element of
Uh,
we do play a lot of games, and I know what I like and what I don't like too.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, like I don't have a definite side because like developers are right. Like um, there can be certain games where the UI is a good UI is required. You
Yeah.
know, um, but then there are other games where that's just not required at
Mhm.
all. So I don't know. I'm
All right.
I'm 50-50 on it. I just depends on the game. To be honest
Yeah,
with you.
true. It is a case by case thing. So fair enough. All right, Montreal. Let's move into the news.
All
We
right.
don't have a ton to talk about this week, but let's start with the state of play. So I don't think I'm not going to go through this game by game because
Yeah, because
this was what Montreal and I think, and a lot of us have come to expect. It was not good. It is. I will say this again because I said this after the PlayStation Showcase last year, that Sony has turned State of Play into something where we expect it to be terrible, because they made a show that was excellent in the PlayStation Showcase, and now they've set the expectation that the PlayStation Showcase is good shit and State of Play is not good shit. And that's kind of where I come down on it. This is the same thing. Um, and a lot of what they showed here, it kind of feels like certain elements of this are just them fulfilling marketing deals they might have with somebody like Square Enix, for instance, where they showed Square like fucking 4 or 5 of Square's games in this 20-minute presentation, and it's
yeah,
like, one of them was like a game coming out next week. It's like, come on, dude. It's like, do we really need to see Stranger of Paradise again in this kind of thing? No. Oh, and then, fucking Ghostwire Tokyo's in here too, and that's coming out in 2 weeks. It's like, come on, guys. Like, you really like insulting us and just wasting our time like this? Like, I don't know. I mean, what are your overall thoughts on it?
I thought it was pretty weak. I thought with the companies that were involved showed pretty weak. I This is a personal beef. This is nothing against Sony. This is more so a jab at Capcom. Um, that game Primal or what's it called? Exo Primal. Exo Primal.
Exo Primal,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that game was such a cock tease. Like it was such a blue balls tease, and I
Yeah.
explain why it's a blue balls tease. I mean, you probably already know because you've been on the video game side of Twitter
Mhm,
when that game was released or when that game was shown. First, they show a redhead character.
mhm,
So there's a big redhead character named Regina and she's in Dino Crisis. People have been asking for a Dino Crisis like remake since the Resident Evil remakes have been who came out or
Hmm.
whatever. So we see this character like, holy shit, is that Regina? And they're like, oh, the dinosaurs are about to attack. And we're like, it's like that Vince McMahon meme. He's like, he's
Yeah.
like, and it's just like, I'm about to get my gun. It's like, and
Yeah.
it's like fucking Exo Primal. They're coming through a portal. We gotta jump in our mechs. And oh my god, they're like, no, you fucking didn't, Capcom. Like Capcom knew exactly what the fuck they were doing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I was really that set the precedence for the whole fucking state of play.
Well, that was the start, right? Yeah, right. That
Yeah.
was the start. So, well, then, so they do that. Then they show Ghostwire. Then they show Stranger Paradise, and you're just kind of like, okay, what the fuck, dude? Like, you gonna show anything worthwhile here? And then they show Forspoken again, and this game got delayed. It's coming out in October 11th now. It got a few month delay. But it's like they're showing that game again. We've seen this game a million times. This is my point about it feeling like marketing deals they're fulfilling, because how many times are you going to show us these games? It's like at a certain point, it's just literally insulting. You're like, hey guys, get excited. We've got a state of play, and here's a bunch of games that we've shown you in other state of plays 3 times before now. Like they were doing with Deathloop like 85 times.
So you know the actor Zendaya?
Yeah.
Somebody called Forspoken Zendaya of the Wild.
Oh, shit.
Oh my god! I was like, wow, that character kind of does resemble her. Like,
Maybe that's what they were
was
going
just funny.
for.
Maybe
It seems unlikely though. I feel like she's gotten really popular in the last like 6 months or year, really.
no, she's been popular for the last couple of years.
Okay,
actually,
but
she's
I
been
feel
really
like
popular,
she's hit like a crescendo though, because now she's on my timeline all the time, and I was never seeing her like 6 months
Oh
ago.
yeah, I
Like
think it definitely started with like whatchamacallit,
Euphoria, Spider-Man.
Euphoria.
She was in
Yeah,
Dune too, wasn't she?
yeah. I don't know. Was she in Dune? I'm not sure.
I think she was.
I know she was in a couple of other movies, and I think she was like a Disney kid too. I think at one
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah, so she's hitting all the boxes for
yeah,
what people like.
but I just thought that was really really funny. But yeah, you're right. Like they're showing Forspoken again and everything like that, and
Mhm.
a lot of people are actually upset about that delay. I'm like, that's actually good for me because I don't need to worry about
That
other
game,
game.
I don't think that game was gonna do well in May.
Yeah, it wasn't, man. It wasn't.
Yeah,
It was actually really good that they pushed that game back because a lot of people can enjoy it because it was just too many heavy hitters, man.
yeah,
Too many heavy hitters coming out.
right.
So
Yeah, there's such a glut of stuff coming out that I think people would still have been playing shit from like February, in May, and like might not have played it, for Spoken. So after that, they showed a Gundam game that looks terrible. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection, which has like 13 games in it or something like that from Konami. Something called Giga Bash is coming in 2022. It looks like some kind of kaiju brawler of some sort. Then they showed a
oh yeah,
JoJo's
yeah.
Bizarre Adventure fighting game, which actually looked like decent enough, or maybe even good, but I don't care
Yeah,
about JoJo's. So.
they used to have an old fighting game. That
Oh,
was
it's
on
a
the
remake.
Dreamcast.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, they used to have an old fighting game that was on the Dreamcast. So, yeah, JoJo's is pretty fucking old. A lot of people don't know that, but I love
yeah,
JoJo's. So
yeah. It's from like the 80s, isn't it?
I
The
think the
manga.
80s or the 90s. Yeah,
Yeah,
80s or the 90s or something like
it's
that. I think it
it's
ended in the 90s. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah. Then the next thing they showed was Trek to Yomi, which is like a samurai slasher game. It had a very very unique look. It looks cool, but not my kind of game. Then they showed Returnal is getting a patch. Actually, this is actually cool. It's getting a co-op patch, so you can play the game in co-op now. Which
Mhm.
suddenly I'm like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah,
really
I
exciting.
was like, no, I think I'm like, yeah, if I can play that with Justin or DJ, that would be fucking
Yeah,
cool,
right.
yo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool, man. I the thing is, I don't want to pay the price that the game requires, though.
it's
Like
still 60. It's still $70.
$70, and the lowest I've
Yeah,
seen it on sale is 35, and that was one time. I've seen it $35. So I'm like, when it's 20, I'll pick it up. It's like I'm not paying that much for it. So and then there were two more things from Square. Something called the Dio Field Chronicle, which I think was it you that was saying it just looks like it like they're like ripping off Fire Emblem like hardcore, like Three Houses.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I saw it. I'm like watching the gameplay, and I'm like, bro, this just looks like a. I thought it was a mobile game, dude. I'm not even kidding. And then I see the platforms of PS4 and PS5, and I'm like, no, this isn't a mobile game. I'm like, no, like it looks like a fucking mobile game. And I'm like, oh man, oh, so
Who knows? The game may be fun though.
who
It may be a
knows?
fun strategy game.
Who
But
knows? I don't know.
it definitely resembled. They had the same three colors: red, blue, and yellow.
Yep.
Um, and they're fighting over land. And I was just like, this looks like Fire Emblem Three Houses, but store brand version.
Yeah.
Like I
Well,
went to
like two of the
Walmart.
nations are fighting each other, and the third one's like neutral, but gets dragged into the
Yeah,
war. It's like the same
yeah,
setup. Like Golden Deer was like the neutral one.
yeah.
It's like the same fucking setup. So, and then the last thing, this was actually a really surprise announcement. I don't personally care, but was a Valkyrie profile game called Valkyrie Elysium. Is coming out this year in 2022.
Oh, that's what that game was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're reviving the Valkyrie profile IP, and people were like really excited about this. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I've never understood Valkyrie profile, like what it even is. Like, it's an RPG series, but it seems like it's been different genres at different times. Like, I remember playing a Valkyrie profile fucking strategy like RPG at some point on I think it was on the DS or the Game Boy Advance. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And then there's like this one looks like an action game of some sort, and I think the old
Yeah, the
school
one I
ones were
played,
like,
the PS1, and that
yeah,
was an RPG
it was like
game.
a turn-based RPG, right? Like JRPG.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I'm happy for people. I'm happy they're getting this. Square seems to be really going in hard on their old IP right now. You've got this Front Mission, you've got Chrono Cross they're reviving, like all sorts of crazy shit. There's a Final Fantasy Tactics remaster supposedly getting announced soon. So like they're really pushing their old IP hard right now, which really hits me hard because Tactics Ogre's just sitting there and they're doing nothing with it, and it makes me upset. Because they're making all these
Hmm.
strategy games, bro. Like Tactics Ogre is so good. Like go in on that, make a new one. Like fuck. Ugh.
Holy shit! I want them to remake. I want them not remake. I really want them to re-release Valkyrie Profile One. That game was
Yeah,
so fucking good. Ah,
yeah,
that game was so good. Oh my god, that game was really fucking fun.
yeah. But overall, the state of play was a waste of 20 minutes. So
Yeah, if I can ask for it back, I wish I could, but I can't.
yeah,
So
I'm sure there were some people that were very excited about some pieces of this, and more power to you. I was not one of them. I really, honestly, I kind of fast forwarded through a lot of it. I was kind of jumping around because I was seeing like, oh, is that Stranger of Paradise they're doing a trailer for? I was like, oh my god, like, like it's like 2 minutes
yeah,
long. Skip, like.
yeah. Luckily, I was building a rack at work, so I was just like watching it while I was building the rack and configuring it, and I was just like, oh, okay. Only time I got really excited was genuinely when they showed the redhead chick that was
Hmm.
an Exo Primal because I thought that was going to be a Dino Crisis remake,
And then it was all
and
downhill from
actually,
there.
you know what? They baited us even harder because her partner was black, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
pissed. In the game, her partner was black, so they show the black guy and then they show the redheaded white chick, and I'm like, and they're talking about dinosaurs, like, and they're like, nah, we're sorry. So
Yeah. Yep. Okay, let us move on, Montrell. This is a story. This next bit of news is something that's been going on for a couple weeks, few weeks, really. Now we haven't talked about it yet, but I thought it was kind of like we need to at some point, because it actually does affect gaming. Is Russia's invasion of the Ukraine in Eastern Europe? And this has been going on since February 24th is when they invaded. So we're at like 16 or 17 days. Well, not that many actually. I think it's like 12, something like that, or 14 days. Like a
mhm.
couple weeks into this at this point. And you know, this has been met with tons of condemnation worldwide, you know, for good reason. I definitely do not support this. This is horrible. I hope it ends soon. However, it does touch gaming in a lot of ways, in fact. GSC Game World, who are the developers of Stalker 2, they are based in Kiev, and clearly they are affected by this invasion, and they had to post online that the game is obviously delayed indefinitely. We have no idea if or when it will come out at this point. You know, assuming the war ends in Ukraine's favor, I'm sure it will resume after that. But if things do not go that way, well, then I think it's up in the air what might happen there. So that is obviously one of the bigger effects of this invasion. But there have been other things. There are tons of games that and game companies that have taken action in order to almost jump in on the sanctions that have been put against Russia. So Microsoft halted all product sales in Russia. Uh, and they said that the country's cyber attacks against civilians violate the Geneva Convention. PlayStation pulled Gran Turismo 7 from sale in Russia as well. CD Projekt Red has stopped selling their games in Russia and Belarus. EA has announced that they are removing all Russian clubs from FIFA and NHL games in the coming weeks. The So there's been a number of things like that as well. There's more as well. There's been a lot of support in terms of financial support, donations to charities and things from various publishers and developers. But I just felt it was appropriate that we talk about this, at least acknowledge it that it is happening, and that the gaming industry is involved to a degree. Montrell, is there anything you'd like to say about this? You know, in relation to gaming or otherwise?
Um, so while I do feel bad for the people of Ukraine, I don't want to see anybody go through this. Having your country, I can only imagine how it is having your home, losing your homes, and then being
Mhm.
invaded and things of that nature.
Yeah.
However, my beef is not with like the Ukrainian people or anything like that. My beef is with how, or not even the sanctions. I think the sanctions are perfectly fine. Um, I think my beef is with how centralized everyone is
Mhm.
over this situation. We have to remember, yeah, this is Putin's fault.
Yeah.
This is not like a thing that we elected. Yes, they elected Putin into office, but come on, guys, let's
Well,
be honest.
elected in quotes, yeah, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I say, come on, guys, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Like, yes, the Russian people elected Putin into office and things of that nature, um, quote unquote, on the election. But it's not like us where we have Congress and people that represent us and that we voted into office. Even though I feel like they have too much power, they should still go through the people to
Mhm.
see if we want to go to war. There is still a process there.
Yeah.
Whereas he can just do what the fuck he wants to do,
Mhm.
and he did what the fuck he wanted to do
Yeah.
without the consent of the Russian people, without them even knowing. A lot of people didn't even know what was going on until like 3 or 4 days in. They're like, oh shit, like
Mhm.
we just invaded another country, and you know and they have a lot of propaganda over there. So to punish the people of Russia, I feel like is very, very. I feel like we're doing the wrong thing, and we're
Yeah.
further alienating them towards Putin, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
and
I actually feel a lot of the same way. I think a lot of the things these game companies are doing, stopping the sale of their games, removing the Russian team. I mean, honestly, actually, EA's thing, removing the Russian teams from their games, actually feels like the most like actually appropriate thing to do, because that doesn't hurt the people of Russia as much. Because yeah, like I think there's it's fairly obvious that not everybody in Russia supports this, right? There were protests early on, like almost immediately after this happened, and the fucking Russian government like is like disappearing people and shit that participated in that stuff. Like it, you know, it's awful
mhm,
stuff. And even the military of Russia it's not a volunteer army; it's conscription based. So they're like forced to fight. You know, like they don't have a
exactly.
choice in the matter. So I think even a lot of the soldiers probably don't necessarily want to be there doing what they're doing.
A lot of them
Um,
didn't even know what was going on until
yeah,
you know the Ukrainian people were like they got captured and they're like, "Yo, why are you doing that? Why are you invading?" And they're like, "Wait, they told us that you guys wanted us to come here." Like,
yeah,
so it's a really nuanced conversation that I think a lot of companies aren't having, and maybe the government is forcing them like low key to do this. But like
yeah,
our government, like other countries, like CD Project Red or whatever, they're in different countries, so they can't. And maybe their government's just kind of forcing them to do the same thing. I know Europe has a little bit of a different like take on this from the American aspect of things. Like this is like really personal to them.
hmm
So um, like I said, I don't know the European culture behind the war, but I
hmm
know they're taking this super hard, and it's way different from like the American side. I feel like the American side, though, for us, I don't think the company should be doing anything. Um, I feel like they should do what League of Legends are doing, or Riot. They're like, hey, we're donating money to the people of Ukraine, but
Ukraine,
they're
right,
not like they're not shutting off servers, shutting off uh,
right,
tunnels from Russia to their oceanic or EU servers or whatever. So I think people should go that route instead of being like, you can show solidarity with Ukraine without isolating the Russian people. Because I think the Russian people are honestly, even with the sanctions, I think they're honestly like the victims in this whole fiat. They're like collateral damage,
yeah.
and you don't want the people to go to the side of Putin. You want them to kind of actually, you
Well, not
know,
only that,
revolt.
man. Yeah, well, I think that's the intent, right? Is like they're trying to push the people into discontentment to the point that they do revolt. That's like the point of the sanctions, I think, and a
Hmm.
lot of this other stuff. That's like the intent behind it. But I don't think it's going to work in this case. And I think the other aspect of this is that I think well, I don't want to see the Russian people get demonized the way what happened with like 9/11, with people with
Us,
Muslim people, right?
yeah. Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
like I don't want to see that same kind of mentality develop around this, that we like, because it's being like there's always a thing with these wars where there is an enemy, right? And like the media and the governments will portray that enemy in a certain light in order to kind of like get people behind the war, the war effort.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that here. I mean, I don't want to see that at all, period. To be honest. So I do fear for that too. The more this pushes in that direction, with these sanctions and removing sales of stuff, and all portraying Russia in whatever, in a super negative light, like I don't know. It's a really hard situation. It is super nuanced because like we realistically cannot send troops over there, because that will just ignite World War III. Like there's like, and we can't, that cannot happen, But at the same time, it's really hard to just let Russia do whatever they want. At the same time, there is a point where you kind of have to push back against them, like worldwide, like the rest of the world.
Hmm.
I just I don't know. So hope for the best. Support Ukraine in whatever monetary way you can, in terms of donating to charities or some other means, whatever other means you can. But I just wanted to acknowledge it here on the podcast that it was happening. It does affect gaming. There is a gaming aspect to this. Gaming has actually been very active in this, in a way other industries have not been. So, which is interesting to see for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's move on. Montrell, our final news story for the week is Gotham Knights got a release date, and it is coming out on October 25th this year. Um, are you surprised it's actually coming out this year?
Yeah, I am actually. Well, so I think it's one of those things where they waited to see if the Batman movie would do good, and since it's doing
Mm.
good, they kind of like greenlit it.
Mm.
That's what I think will
It's an
happen. To be
interesting
honest with
thought.
you,
Yeah, I guess the
yeah,
timing does kind of indicate that, doesn't it? I
yeah.
didn't
I
think
think
about
they were
that.
really waiting for it, and if it didn't do good, then they're going to delay it to make sure like the movie was out of people's minds, and then release the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, are you excited about this one based on what we've seen of it?
Yes and no. I have to see more of it to be honest with you. From
Yeah.
what I saw of it, I wasn't really too. I'm not too privy on it being a Avengers esque game,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like an online game. Um, but you can play it single player, right?
Yeah, no, there's no multiplayer beyond. There's co-op. Like we can play the campaign in
Oh,
co-op
okay. I
together.
thought I thought it was like a Destiny like
No, no,
game.
no, no, no,
Okay,
no, no. It's a
okay.
single
That
player
that
game.
actually changes a lot then. In
Yeah,
that case, I am kind of excited for it because it looks really cool. Like the combat looks really fucking dope and everything. So
yeah. No, and this was the one we were gonna co-op together. I think. Um,
yeah. Okay.
so yeah, no, I'm really cautiously optimistic. I haven't seen enough that's blown me away. Really, what I have
Hmm.
seen is good, and I'm excited to check it out for sure. But at the same time, I think I might need another trailer to really get me like jazzed for it, like super jazzed
Hmm.
for it. So
Okay.
we'll see if we get that at like E3 or something. Because this announcement I don't think came with a trailer. It doesn't look like so. Um, so yeah, this will be interesting to see. I'll be interested to see how this game stacks up against Suicide Squad 2 from Rocksteady um, next year. You know how they compare if Suicide Squad kind of blows it out of the water in terms of quality and everything and how it's received
Yeah.
versus
Hmm.
this. Um, so yeah, October 25th. Look forward to that. All right, Montrell. Final segment is guess the meta score. We're following up on last week. We were guessing Babylon's Fall, and so Montrell for Babylon's Fall guessed 6, and I guessed a 5.4, and the current actual Metascore for Babylon's Fall is a 4 right now on
Wow.
PlayStation
So you
5.
won.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't that close though either. Like, still one and a half off pretty much. So this game has totally face planted and flopped as hard as possible. I watched some gameplay videos of it, man. And dude, I can't believe Platinum made this game. I am like,
It's that bad, huh?
dude, it's so, dude, you have to go watch a video or two of it, man. It's just so, it's lifeless. Like it's just like, oh my god. Like the animations and shit in the combat just looks like so dull, man. And the game's graphics, like graphically, just do not look good. I don't know how Platinum made this. Like, it came out in the state that it's in right now.
Hmm.
That seems crazy to me. So, but yeah, IGN gave it a 40. Video Game Chronicle gave it a 20. Like, oof, dude, like big oof, Um,
Yeah.
so for next week, the game coming out next week that we're gonna guess is Stranger Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. This is a fairly anticipated game for both of us. I do think it actually has a decent amount of hype behind it, in terms of people looking forward to it for one reason or another. So this is an interesting game to guess. What are you thinking the score is going to be for this one?
I'm giving it a solid 8.
Okay, an 8. Let me take that down. So Montreal's guessing an 8. Okay. This is a tough one for me because I firmly believe the gameplay in this game is going to be really good. However, on the other side of the coin, I feel like the story in this game is going to be laughably bad, you know? Like to the point that people are memeing on it the way they were with the demo and just making fun of it and shit. That's kind of my expectation, meaning that I think there's a chance this game goes over well with some critics, but goes over really poorly with other critics. Meaning that the score for this game is going to be really like pulled all over the place, the final meta score. So I'm going to say for this one, I'm going to go 7.3, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my final guess. We'll see what happens next week. So cool. Well, those are our Metascore guesses. Um, if you guys have a guess for Final Fantasy Origin, Stranger of Paradise, let us know, and we'll check it next week when we get the final answer for this. So, well, Montrell, that's it. That's all we got this week, man. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we take off?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right, fair enough. So, guys, if you like this episode, please like the episode, review the show, and subscribe to the show on whatever feed you are listening to it on. And please share it with your friends. If you'd like to interact with us on Twitter, you can do so at iTrap4the Hokage for Montrell. That is the number 4, not the word. I'm at ThunderNut01, and the show is at The Player's Take. If you'd like to send us a question, you can do so on Twitter, or you can send us an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com. And that is it for us, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next week.